Welcome to this conversation between Andrew Tucker and myself, Leo Meijer, about things going on in Israel and the broader Middle East. We want to have a conversation and to help you understand the context of the things happening in that area of the world and for which the media are full discussing the things which are happening there. And we would like to give you an insight of what we see, which is happening. My name is Leo Meijer. I'm the Executive Director of Christians for Israel International. And I will let it to Andrew to introduce himself.
So I'm Andrew Tucker, and I'm also connected with Christians for Israel. I'm an editor of the publication Israel and Christians Today. I'm a lawyer by training, and I'm leading a think tank called the Hague Initiative for International Cooperation, which is basically an initiative of international lawyers studying Israel and the Middle East from a legal perspective. So I wear a couple of hats here, and we're going to talk a little bit about those hats.
True.
Which is good.
Well, if we follow the news in the last couple of weeks, there's one item which is coming up all the time, which is about Palestinian statehood recognition. Just the blunt questions: why are nations so fixated on this topic right now?
Well, I think it's been a fixation for over 100 years. And it's been on the UN agenda ever since the UN was created in 1945. They have on their agenda this idea that they need to solve the problem of Palestine. So really ever since the UN was created in 1945, Israel was created in 1948, and immediately although Israel was recognized as a state, although it's become a UN member state, the issue has emerged that there's still the problem of the Palestinians that needs to be resolved. And formally, the UN is seized of that issue. They see it as their responsibility to solve this conflict. So that's why the UN is obsessed. But I think there's something much deeper about it, and that is why are the nations of the UN and the world so obsessed.
So why are they so obsessed?
Well, I think because there's a sort of a sense that the state of Israel was created at the expense of the people of Palestine, which in a sense I can understand, because the Jewish people came home to the land that they regard as their eternal homeland from let's say the early 1800s onwards, especially the mid-1800s onwards, through Zionism. But of course, the Jews were only a very small minority in the area known as Palestine. Palestine is a word invented by the Romans when they destroyed Jerusalem and then crushed the Judean uprising of Bar Kokhba in 135, and the Emperor Hadrian gave Judea the name Palestine to erase every Jewish connection. So it's been known as Palestine. It's an area. And in, let's say, 1850, when the Jews started to come back from Eastern Europe mainly, but also later many other parts of the world, the Jews were only like 10% of the population of Palestine. So when the State of Israel was created, it was created in a context of conflict. There was a war going on between the Jews and the Arab population of Palestine. And I think many people have a sense, well, what about those Arabs? Why don't they also have a right to a state? Was it right that there was a Jewish state created? And we have Palestinian refugees, and they haven't been given a real political status. So this whole thing is hanging around, and nobody quite knows the solution. And we have territories that are formally under a military administration by Israel, the so-called occupied territories. We don't like that. Nobody likes that. And there has to be a resolution of that. So it's a festering problem that everybody has put away, and now I think with the Gaza conflict, people are realizing there's got to be some solution. And that's why they're now looking at Palestinian statehood.
I understand that if people see the suffering of the people in Gaza, that they are urged to do something to end the conflict and to end the conflict for good. But recognizing a Palestinian state, is it more than just a symbolic act?
No, so it's, this is the thing where we've been talking. Europe is obsessed by the idea of Palestinian statehood, right? We have been since the 1970s. And Europe kind of has always thought that the Palestinians have a right to a state. It's formal European policy, by the way. That is written in concrete in Brussels. So that's why I think Macron, particularly of France, he's the one pushing this latest initiative. The French have always been very pro-Arab, rather anti-Israel. And this is their moment of opportunity. What they're wanting to do in the United Nations in September is to recognise Palestine. Well, it is a political statement.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the reality on the ground. It's not going to create a Palestinian state. It will simply be a political initiative, which is really saying nothing more than the Palestinians should have a state of their own. But states are not created by recognition. Although this is a discussion
this is my question. If you look to the world and to history, where did ever emerge a state which was recognized first and then became a state, and then became into functioning? Is there an example, or are we lacking such examples?
Well, it goes back to your definition of what is a state.
Okay.
And none of us really quite know what a state is. We have a number of formal criteria, but even they are not fully accepted. But look, essentially you need to have a people, a nation, not just a people, but a nation, having a government over a territory and a people that they're governing.
Right.
And the core really of that, the most critical, is the idea of an independent, effective government. You can't have a real state without an effective government. Now, the problem is we've got a lot of states around the world which don't have an effective government, failed states.
Right, yeah.
And they're still states, right? So it's a bit hard to kind of argue that you have to have an effective government to be a state when so many states don't. Look at Syria, for example. Why do we recognise this government of Syria as... Because, well, many reasons, but it's not because it's an effective government. It's a political thing. So there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty about what is a state. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. You can't just make up a state on paper. You've got to have, at the end of the day, a reality on the ground which constitutes a state. And I think most people, even the French and the Saudis, would agree that Palestine is not a state yet. For the main reason is even the Palestinian Authority is not really governing even the West Bank,
right,
let alone Gaza.
Yeah.
So you can't, it's not a state. What they're trying to do is to give a perspective to the Palestinians for a state that they think they should have. And they think Israel is the one that's being the obstacle to that state. That's the message they're trying to give. And that's the problem, I think.
The other day I was looking to a video of Bill Clinton saying they could have a state. I was there, and this was the time that Yasser Arafat betrayed me. He promised me to say yes, and he said no. And if I recall, Clinton says they got 96% of the West Bank, including Gaza. They got a trade-off with 4% of land elsewhere. East Jerusalem was their capital. And in the end, Yasser Arafat said no. They could have had a state if he had said yes. Yep. What makes France or other countries, England, Canada, believing that this time the Palestinian will say yes to this state?
Yeah. I think it's kind of dreaming, it's an idealism. They want to believe that the Palestinians want a state living in peace side by side with Israel. And what you're talking about is absolutely right. This was 2001, I think, very end of Clinton's term. He was trying to bring to a close the whole Oslo process, and he had Camp David, and he brought Barak and Arafat to Camp David, and the whole thing fell apart when Arafat walked away.
Right.
So there was this deal on the table, and they could have. But there have been so many of these moments throughout history. And it's a problem of the Palestinian leadership. They've never been able to create a leadership which genuinely has legitimacy among the people and genuinely wants to lead the people. Like even Arafat, for example, was not a true Palestinian. He was brought in from Egypt. So the PLO lacks legitimacy, and the Palestinian Authority, even today under Abbas, lacks authority because it's regarded as foreign. It's not really come from the Palestinian people themselves. And yet we as an international community have kind of thrust this upon the Palestinians.
No.
I think that's been one of the problems. And we keep wanting to believe that they're going to. But if you look at the last 100 years, they when it push comes to shove, they have never wanted to accept the idea of a Palestinian state existing side by side with a Jewish state. And I think that's the root of the problem, is the leadership never wants to accept the existence. They'll say they do, but the truth is they don't, because they're not willing to go that last step of accepting the existence of the Jewish nation in Palestine as an independent people.
Right. So it still bothers me that willing to end the conflict, that this is the perspective the Palestinians need to end a conflict.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not.
I don't want to sound hopeless, but
Yeah.
is this the hope which we need, which will, in the end, will end the conflict? Or, let me rephrase, what is needed to end the conflict? Is this the right step to in your opinion, to end the conflict?
It's a difficult question. We all have our own personal opinions. My own view is that at the end of the day, like any conflict, the parties to the conflict need to want to resolve it.
Right.
And so we cannot, as outsiders, impose a solution, which I think we've been doing.
Yeah.
Actually, for 100 years. The Jewish people belong in Palestine. The Arab population also belong in Palestine. They have to live together. The Jewish state of Israel is not going away. It's not going to commit suicide. The Palestinians are also not going away. They have to find some way of coexisting. And in my perspective, state or no state is really not the point.
Mm-hmm.
What I think the Palestinians need is a dignified life where they have recognized existence as a people.
Right.
Put aside the history, whether Palestinians are a people or not, difficult. But the fact of the matter is, you've got millions of non-Jewish residents of Palestine who do not have a political future and don't even have a political status. They're refugees, and we've kept them in that position. And I don't think the promise of a state is really necessarily what they need. They need independence, maybe, autonomy, yes.
Yeah.
But the idea of a state is a very Western idea. It doesn't really work in the Middle East. Well, we've seen that in many countries. Look at Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
A Western concept of a state is problematic. And there are a lot of signs in Palestinian society that they're actually made up of clans, families, groups, geographically.
Yeah.
These are the people who need to govern themselves. And they need to be recognised and be given a place and an opportunity to do that. And the PLO is definitely not allowing them to do it. The PA is suppressing every kind of genuine attempt at peaceful cohabitation in Palestinian society.
Do you see any signs of people rising up and claiming exactly what you said, claiming that they want to be able to govern themselves, to have a status, maybe not a state, but a status, have freedom? Do you see any examples among the Palestinians where you say, well, if you look at this...
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
I mean, even in Gaza, we saw in northern Gaza a number of families that were pushing back against Hamas and saying, we are, even conflict, people being killed by Hamas, the leaders of these families, saying, no, we don't want to be under Hamas. This is our land. We want to govern our people. So we will decide who gets the food, right? One of the most famous cases is one of the sheikhs from Hebron who's come out, and there are a number of them saying, no, we don't want to live under the PA. We don't recognise the PA as our government.
Right.
We want to govern ourselves. So, yeah, there are examples. Too few, unfortunately, because there's kind of a culture of suppression and fear. I think a lot of brainwashing. It's a very religious thing as well, you know, and you have all these very, very hard, radical jihad movements in the West Bank, in Gaza, which are terrorizing their own people. So people are afraid to speak out. They get killed.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah. And ending, you know, it still bothers me or boggles me. Ending the conflict by a Western concept of we give you a state and then it's settled. You are explaining that be careful with your Western concepts in a conflict which is much more complex than just people wanting to have a state with a president and then we're finished. If you look to the negotiations that the Israeli had with the Palestinians, did you see any understanding of maybe breaking away from this Western concept of you need a state, so let's talk about a state?
No, I don't. And on both sides, you know, because I think there is a problem of understanding on both sides. I think Israel, speaking generally, have not well understood the nature of Palestinian society, which is very fragmented and unorganized, and there's, you know, their main concern is about security and making sure that terrorist attacks are not happening.
Right.
So and I think rightly their primary concern is to make sure whatever on the other side comes into being, that it's that's going to be peaceful. And I think we as Europeans and the West in general have imposed this idea upon them. We've thrust it and we've hammered it on them, and we keep beating them over the head on this idea. You have to recognise a Palestinian state. So there's very little room for them to come up with alternatives. Now, the Oslo Accords was the best attempt to try and create a roadmap going forward. But what did they do? They created the Palestinian Authority. Yeah. Which is, so first of all, the international community basically compelled Israel to negotiate with the PLO. So Arafat was brought in, right? He took over the PLO.
Right. He was brought in from Tunis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the PLO has created problems wherever they've been, in Lebanon, in Tunisia, in Jordan. I mean, they create chaos and uprisings. And yet when Arafat took over, the UN accepted him and nominated and claimed him to be the sole permanent representative of the Palestinian people, the PLO, and gave them this status in the UN. So we're stuck with the PLO. But the PLO is a terrorist organization. always has been, and still is in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it denies, just read their charter, the basic legitimacy of the Jewish state of Israel. So you have a fundamental
Was
problem.
it not adjusted or?
It was slightly amended in 1968.
Yeah.
And Arafat promised Clinton he was going to amend it after 1993. Letters were written. That was part of the Oslo
Yeah.
group of documents.
Yeah.
It was a promise by Arafat that the PLO would amend its charter. It never happened. To this day, it has never been amended. So the document literally and expressly denies the legitimacy of the Jewish state of Israel. That to me is a fundamental problem.
Right.
And yet we keep pushing this forward. And we often say, well, yes, they have to change it, and yes, they have to do this. But so long as you promote this political leadership, I think we're going down the wrong path. And we're missing the opportunities that there may be to see an alternative Palestinian leadership.
Well, now, if we try to look at it from another perspective, so here we tell France, well, this is not the way to go forward. Now, just suppose Macron will phone us and he said, okay, tell me, which way do I need to go? So, can we help Macron and Starmer and Canada and Australia? What would our advice be to those nations? I think one of your advices look broader than just the PLO. If you look to the PLO, it consists of many factions, many political parties.
Yeah.
Even one party is recognized as a terrorist organization, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, both in Europe and America being on the terror list, which is part of the PLO.
Yeah.
You said the PLO is a terrorist organization. Well, one of their factions is a recognized terror organization.
Yeah.
But I'm still thinking if people say, well, you're easy talking. France is moving ahead. France and the others are trying to end the conflict. So you say this is not the way, but now we're going to advise Macron. What is the way?
Well, some way, some kind of roadmap needs to be created, indeed, of finding an alternative. It's not Hamas. I think we have to really question whether the Palestinian Authority is... I mean, Abbas has been in power for how long? 19, 20 years?
Yeah.
Without elections.
He was elected and then no elections followed afterwards.
So we don't even know who's going to succeed him. We don't know if he dies today or tomorrow. It'll be chaos in the West Bank. There'll be a civil war in Palestinian society. And the same thing will happen in the West Bank as happened in Gaza when Hamas took over.
Yeah.
So this is the reality that Israel knows it's dealing with. The West should realize this as well. And I don't know how it should be done, but some way needs to be found to be looking for alternatives, Palestinian civil society, people. And there are people around, like the sheikh from Hebron, who I mentioned, who are putting up their hand and saying there is a groundswell within Palestinian society of people who would be willing to provide some kind of new leadership. But it's a radically different approach.
Andrew, we've been talking a lot about, I've been mentioning France, Canada, United Kingdom, but I often look to what are the Arab states doing?
Yeah.
What is Egypt saying? What is Saudi Arabia saying? And I found it quite silent from those states.
Yeah.
There is pressure to end the conflict, but not so much as from Western nations.
Well, they all formally demand the creation of a Palestinian state.
Yeah.
Many of them deny the legitimate existence of the state of Israel. I mean, you have let's say, over 50 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The Arab League has over 20 members. I think there are around 20 states in the world, Arab or Islamic states, like Malaysia, do not even accept the existence of the State of Israel. It's not only
Indonesia,
do they not like it,
I think Indonesia neither.
I'm not even sure. Maybe
Okay.
Indonesia as well. So that's the culture, that's the mindset, which I think is part of the Islamic thinking, which drives the OIC and the Arab League to a large extent, is that you cannot have a Jewish state on Arab territory, Islamic territory. So they're kind of committed to what they call the two-state solution, the creation. Well, if you look at their statements, they're not committed to a two-state solution. They're committed to the creation of a Palestinian state. And while some of them...
I didn't recognize it, but if they would support a two-state solution, they would automatically accept a Jewish state.
The Arab League, last year at the International Court of Justice, presented the case. They represent over 20 states, including Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and all the other Gulf states, which are very moderate.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the official Arab League position is that the creation of the State of Israel was a fundamental injustice against the Palestinian people. And basically what you should have is one Palestinian state, which should be democratic, and therefore all the Arabs will be in the majority in that state. When I heard that, I thought that's the reality.
Yeah.
So, and they'll talk about two states, but the reality is that they really believe that the Arab Palestinians are the legitimate owners of the whole of Palestine. That's what we're up against.
So maybe we are coming up with an advice to Macron. It's not the recognition of a Palestinian state, but maybe he should demand at the UN the recognition of Israel as a state which should have safe borders and should be safeguarded from terrorism, and have the world acknowledge and recognize this state. There will be place and room to discuss independence for Palestinians.
Well, I think he does. I mean, I think formally he says there are a number of things that need to happen before really you can have. The problem is that they're putting this promise of statehood there as if it's some kind of absolute right.
Right. Yeah.
That Palestinians have. And it's convinced even the International Court of Justice to say that because they have that right to statehood, all the Jews need to leave the occupied territories. And this has been the very clever strategy of the Arabs and the Palestinians as well, is to take this legal route whereby not only do they get a right to a state, but Israel's existence in the territory of their state becomes illegal. So formally speaking, according to the court, by I think September this year, that's next month, Israel has to remove not only its military but also its civilians from East Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. Now that's a very strong weapon that the Palestinians have and that Macron supports. He thinks the court is right.
Yeah.
So
as facts on the ground, this means that Jews should leave the Western Wall area. This is East Jerusalem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The whole old city of Jerusalem needs to be ethnically cleansed
So this
of
is
Jews.
the holiest place for the Jews.
Yeah.
The place where the temple once stood, where they're praying daily.
Yeah.
This is what they should give up.
Give up, be removed from. That's which Jordan did, you remember, when it took the territories in 1948. It destroyed every synagogue. It just massacred and destroyed every Jewish present. Didn't massacre every Jew, but it ethnically cleansed the so-called West Bank of the Jews, and that's what they want to happen again. And people don't realize this.
No, that's why I'm making it quite vivid that, you know, if you support the idea of, yes, the settlement should be removed and Israel should retract from the West Bank, there is an area which is included, which you might not be aware of, which is the Western Wall.
Yeah. And the bizarre thing is, Leon, I mean, I'm all for Palestinian autonomy and self-determination rights, and even at the end of the day, a state, if that were to happen. But you cannot do it at the expense of ethnically cleansing these territories of Jews, which they claim Israel does to the Arabs.
Right.
They're demanding that of Israel, that it is completely removed of Jews in order to create this Palestinian state. When Israel is, for better or for worse, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it has done its best to try and create a democratic state with Arabs and Jews in the state of Israel. Yeah. I don't believe it's an apartheid state. There's discrimination for sure, but it is a functioning democracy where Arabs have full civilian rights.
Yeah.
But they want to create a Palestinian state where there's no Jew. And if there's a Jew, he or she won't have full civilian rights. Yeah. Actually, the Palestinians have made this very clear. It will be a state under Sharia law. This is an Islamic state we're creating. And Islamic states are not known for treating Jews or Christians, by that way, equally.
No.
So it's a really weird situation we've achieved, and international law is being used to create this. That's a whole different story, you know, how that has happened. So Macron thinks he has the law on his side. He thinks he has history on his side.
Right.
But it's not going to lead to peace.
We started out is it symbolic, or are we heading to the end of a conflict by declaring a Palestinian state or recognizing a Palestinian state? I think in this conversation we show that it is complicated and it's just not the solution to the conflict. I think we can go on for another hour, but we leave it as it is now. Yep. And we hope to come back to the people who are
plenty more to talk about next time.
Enjoy our conversation, and I hope it gave you some insight in the actual items of the day, the news items of the day. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening, and thank you, Andrew, for our conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.